Jean Baudrillard is one of the prophets, one of the future historians of the 21st century. He saw with clarity the collapse of the real, caused by the collapse of the metaphysical dimension, and he saw the emergence of the hyperreal as a consequence of this. In hyperreality, we are increasingly incapable of distinguishing mere symbols and signs and models and simulations invented to stand in for the real from what is real. Think, for example, about calculations on so-called future catastrophic events. A desire for the real is already now inevitably leading to fabrications of simulated reality consumed as real. Think of LARPing. Hence, if anything, we cannot speak of a revenge of the real, but we must speak of the revenge of the hyperreal. Hyperreality and hypermorality go together. Anyone wishing to understand our time must needs have understood Baudrillard. In our consumerist epoch, brands and pre-formatted, sanctioned identities can be counted as prime examples. But also the phenomena, as just mentioned, of LARPing and of internet irony. Wearing a certain brand X can identify you as wealthy or cool, identifying in accordance with a sanctioned pre-formatted identity schema or supporting a hyper-moral cause, for example, offsetting your carbon footprint by paying an additional fee, a mere resemblance of the indulgence trade, reproduces the semblance of power and the ideology it uses to maintain its power. Brand names and logos differentiate products from other products or commodities and generate their value in a seemingly arbitrary hierarchy of hyper-objects. Marx's critique of capitalism is in the background here, and crucial to understand this shift. Marx saw that in capitalism we move from use value to exchange value. Simply put, before capitalism, the value of a commodity was determined largely by utility. Of course, this is all simplifying it. The real use of something. In capitalism, in the revolution of capitalism, this is increasingly replaced by exchange value, by how much money something can be traded for. Already the production of commodities in consumerism, however, is divided from use value and produced according to exchange value, which is simulated through ad campaigns, etc. But this is not necessarily down to manipulation. This shift is structural and indeed existential. We are willful victims of powerful stimuli, of a technocracy of sensuality, as Wolfgang Fritz Haug calls it, and which was already present, of course, also in pre-capitalist times, but more strongly regimented and regulated back then. Powerful stimuli serve as the prime instrument of merchant capitalist valorization, as Haug argues. The brand or label, that is, the sign detached from material reality, becomes more significant than the actual product. The subjective theory of value, which arose in the Austrian school in the late 19th century, cemented this subjectification of value and the erosion of all inherent value. Taken together with the collapse of language into signs and signifiers, often put forth, and ironically so, by supposed critics of capital, consumerism can now operate by providing differentiating signifiers that circle around themselves, devouring the individual. Hence, Patrick Bateman, in the film American Psycho, has only this left to say. My name is Patrick Bateman. I'm 27 years old. There is an idea of a Patrick Bateman, some kind of abstraction, but there is no real me, only an entity, something illusory. And though I can hide my cold gaze and you can shake my hand and feel flesh gripping yours, and maybe you can even sense our lifestyles are probably comparable, I am simply not there. Even entire countries and cities are now brands that market themselves to the planetary locust hordes of tourists. The English language has already for quite some time betrayed the fact that we are only dealing with semblances of semblances. Just think of the ordinary expressions I was kind of like. Not just like, but I was kind of like. Not even a proper like, but even just there, kind of or sort of like. Or this feels like X to me. This like always indicates the endless recycling around itself of empty representations and semblances of semblances that have no original. So of all postmodernists, Baudrillard must thus count as the bleakest one. According to him, we have come to rely so heavily on computer simulations, maps and models that the real is not only threatened, but outright replaced, or rather constructed by the hyper-reality of simulations. There is no atmosphere, no character to the simulations. The representation, the computer model, precedes and determines the real, or what's left of it. We are the children of the hyperreal. We are the first generations who will have to make sense of this. Baudrillard sees here what he refers to as the two precessions of simulacra. Here, two quotes from Baudrillard. The territory no longer precedes the map, nor does it survive it. It is nevertheless the map that precedes the territory, precession of simulacra, that engenders the territory. That's precession of simulacrum 1. Second quote. It is no longer a question of imitation, nor duplication, nor even parody. It is a question of substituting the signs of the real for the real. So we will discuss at an upcoming Baudrillard seminar the three orders of simulacra and where we are today. We will discuss what the hyperreal means for us, and we will discuss how Baudrillard came to understand history as our future myth, as a possibility for myth, because also history is no longer for us a real referential. We have also lost genuine access to history. And we are already further down the line, of course, than Baudrillard. Reality, in some sense, you could say, has collapsed. It is also no longer perspectival, because perspective, or a perspectival age, requires clear vision. I would perhaps go as far as saying that we're wading through the shards of an imploded hall of mirrors, which will continue to collapse. The great danger is that all that has ever existed will be reduced and reproduced as a mere copy of itself. It is no longer a question, writes Baudrillard, of imitation, nor duplication, nor even parody. It is a question of substituting the signs of the real for the real. To repeat this quote. The complete substitution, replica, as one can see in Blade Runner, for example. So if we want to understand our time, we have to understand how planetary power works. Baudrillard, the historian of the future, thought of power as hyperreal as well. That is to say, now power is also a mere semblance of itself. More to the point, he understood that critiques of power and critics of power, and thereby, of course, he addresses his postmodernist contemporaries, are in fact not critics, nor do they provide critiques, but they are themselves integral to the powers that be. Baudrillard writes, in the end, power is so much in tune with ideological discourses and discourses on ideology, that is, they are discourses of truth. Of a truth that is, of course, only posited, pushed through, not truth as such. So I invite you to read Baudrillard with me to try and figure out what the hell is going on. The link to enroll in the seminar is down in the description of this video, and this is also the best way to support the work on this channel. Thank you very much indeed.